Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I can see.
sworn I put a description.
Oh. We need no introduction. Need no description. No description. You just tune in at 2 o'clock on a Friday.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to History Loves Company, this week's edition. Despite our green and red color scheme, we are not talking about Christmas today. We are talking about...
Oh, the Jewish community in Marietta.
My hair's doing
I know, this is... so this actually is going to be part one of two.
We're going to do 2 weeks of this because there's so many great stories. We have a wonderful Jewish history here in the city that we really didn't know a whole lot about, and we're still digging into. And we didn't, I feel like, personally, I can't speak for Christa, but personally, I didn't get enough time this week to really do it justice, to really find out, the information that's pertinent and that we don't want to leave anybody out. Of course, Philip Goldstein was a huge help in sharing some of his research that he's done over the years on Jewish businesses and families that were here on the square, which there were way more than I ever thought so far, and probably even more than are on his list. So.
Yeah, well, and that was the thing. We got the list, and we're like, great, this is a great starting point, but the question we always have is there anybody earlier? Like, does it go back farther than what we currently have in our collection or whatever? Right. And that was the reason that the other day we decided this had to be 2 parts, is because it does go back farther than what our starting point gave us.
So, usually the number one story that comes out with Jewish history here in Marietta is, of course, the unfortunate tale of Leo Frank and Mary Fagan. And if you go back on our YouTube videos or our Facebook videos too,
yeah, they're both there.
Then you'll go way back to, what was that, March? April. It was right around the anniversary. Right, yeah. So in April we did a whole day's worth where we made multiple stops along, and we visit in Atlanta and Marietta and visited a lot of the places that were pertinent to that story. Yeah. And so I highly recommend going back and watching those, and then reading Steve Oney's book, which is And the Dead Shall Rise,
which is available on our online store and in person.
Yes. Great book talking about a very tragic story all around. And so, but we're not going to talk about that today because there really is so much more great Jewish history here in Cobb County and Marietta. So, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I did not have as much time as I would have liked. So today it's going to be a story time with Christa because she has done a lot of the grunt work this week on finding the information. So,
well, and it ended up being that when we decided we knew it went farther back than we realized, we had to split the work up. It just is how it ends up being. So last week, you guys kind of got like a catch up with us on some topics that we'd already discussed and things we had found later. We will probably have the same thing next week with this.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll find some more information about the families we talked about today.
But last week we did kind of go back over, we talked about the Shillings and the Christmas tree. So if you never saw the original Shillings video or last week, the Shillings family is of German descent, along with the Agricolas, another German family. So the other people that we're talking about today are Germans who are from the Jewish religion versus Christian or Protestant. So Marietta had a very large German contingency. Shocking, still the same. But I guess the thought I had always had was it was mainly a 20th century kind of thing. I didn't really, or late 19th century, but really the German Jewish community in Marietta is pre-Civil War, which is, yeah, that's right, pre-Civil War. You had read the book, or at least talked to the guy who wrote the Riches book.
Yeah, Jeff Clemens, yes,
one of our followers.
Yes, and good friend.
Yes, very good friend. So, the Riches family in Atlanta, were they pre-war?
Ooh, on the spot. I think they came right after the war.
Right after the war,
I think Riches is just after the Civil War, about that time. Now, I will say that in some of the research I did get to start on this week, I did do a very, very basic look into just Jews in Georgia.
Right.
And of course, it started in Savannah, and actually, they're the third earliest. Savannah is the third earliest Jewish population in the United States, behind I think it was New York, and then I think it was a Delaware city.
Are we talking Savannah Colony?
Yes, Savannah
Like
Colony.
Georgia, yeah.
Like there was a group that came on a boat, and I can't remember the name of the boat.
I would hope they come on a boat if they came other way.
Came on a boat. And but they were like right after Oglethorpe landed and started planning the city of Savannah. So
okay.
there wasn't a whole lot of them, maybe 30, but it mentioned that one of them was a doctor, and he desperately needed a doctor, and then another was also instrumental in, I can't remember.
I doubt it was a lawyer.
I know it was a lawyer. I can't remember. Oh, he was also he had experience in like winery, like vineyards. Yeah, vineyards. And so,
You
and they
have
of
known
course
that
the I know. But well, there's another word for it.
A vintner?
Maybe, I don't know. Anyways, he knew a lot about that, and of course, for those who know a little bit about early Georgia history, one of the goals of establishing the colony here was to try to grow wines, and they brought over mulberry trees, and they tried to do silk, and they tried to do wine. They tried to do all kinds of things.
Yeah, they're testing it.
Yes, testing the land. And so Oglethorpe thought that he might be helpful in that, so they were welcomed into the community of the small little town of Savannah at that time. And so, but by, I think, the 1760s or maybe a little after the Revolutionary War, maybe a little after that, but before 1800 anyways, the majority of them had then moved. Actually, it was during the battles down in that area during the Revolutionary War. The majority of Jews in that area moved away, either to Baltimore, or
that town will come up again.
Or to New York, I think it mentioned.
Okay.
So, anyways, and then there were two prominent Jewish families that stayed in Savannah, and then they continued as each city started in Georgia, Albany and Columbus, and those smaller cities moving further north, and then eventually Atlanta. A lot of those people and those family members from Savannah migrated north. So eventually they find their way up to Marietta.
You find that a lot, even in the non-Jewish community, people kind of starting out in Savannah and then realizing they're not going to make their money there, so they'll move to these newer places like Albany, Columbus, Augusta, Marietta, whatever. So we had mainly two families that I was kind of researching one was before the Civil War, and then one is after.
Okay.
So the first one is the family of Raphael, I love it, Raphael Hirsch. And
Is his brother Donatello?
No, Michelangelo, or no, none of those. He didn't even name his kids that either.
Isn't Raphael Italian? Isn't that an Italian name? I don't know.
You can name anybody whatever you want. It's fine.
Okay.
So at first, I knew this name. I knew of Hirsch. I knew that there was a business, but I never thought about their religion. And I was like,
well, I think that's something that, for me, most of the families that we have on this list, the family names, I've always seen their names throughout history, but I never realized that they were Jewish. Yeah.
So it was a light bulb moment. Those are the best.
Yes.
We have had the pleasure of going down to Oakland Cemetery and touring with some of our friends that work down there. And the last time we went, which was almost 2 years ago at this point, I remember going through the Jewish section saying, Hirsch. I think there was a Hirsch in Marietta.
I think so.
And it dawned on me earlier this week. Wait a minute. Hirsch, Marietta, Oakland. Because Amy asked me earlier this week if there were Jewish families buried in the city cemetery. No, there's not.
And then I asked Philip, and he said not in the city cemetery, and I think East Cobb has a cemetery. I think I didn't bring my notes.
The temples are over in East Cobb.
Yeah, we'll get into that in some of the later history. I think we'll talk about that next week.
So for us, for Marietta, you really had to go back to the Jewish section in Oakland to try and figure out who our early Jewish business owners were. So Raphael Hirsch is buried over in Oakland in the Jewish portion, and
Wait, show the picture of his tombstone. That's pretty cool. Or was that later? Are you gonna do that later?
I can do it right now.
Did I jump the gun?
Yeah, she did.
No, she didn't. I was like, that's amazing.
It's gonna be backwards, but you can see the picture. That's all right.
such a cool tombstone.
So this is from Find a Grave. If you guys do genealogy, Find a Grave is like one of my first sources just to go to, because somebody else has done the work for me, which is great. So he is buried there with his wife Mina, and then they had children who are buried there as well. But if you go and research the Marietta Journal archives, the first year you can research and search is 1869, right? I think
No,
that's
68. There's one or two. It's not a full year. There's just a small handful of 1868.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So definitely post-war though.
Yes.
I mean, it's definitely post-war. So if you will kindly turn the camera and flip it so they can read it properly.
Let's flip it.
And not me yell at you.
Yes.
Next time around. So
Okay.
this is an advertisement
Yes.
for Raphael Hirsch's Summer Trade Confectionaries. Choice candies, preserves, cakes, wines.
Back it up a little bit.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. Yes.
Canned fruit and tropical fruits of all kinds.
Uh-huh.
Soda water and ice cream. Parties supplied at short notice, so you can have a party there. We offer in our confectionery everything to please the most fastidious taste.
Yes.
And then it's also a dry goods store with clothing, boots, shoes, hats, and caps. And it is on the north side of the square. So why don't we turn the camera north side?
Okay, here's the north side. Now, as you can see, it goes from Church Street all the way, I'm not going to go too fast,
Yeah, not too
over
fast.
here to Cherokee Street over there. That's the block we're talking about, okay? And we're looking at this area here, right?
No. We're actually
wait a minute.
focusing on the block.
Oh, right ahead of us. Okay.
So,
The
more
whole.
like, actually, let's go a little bit over.
All right.
More like Satoria and North Park Gallery.
All right. Okay.
So,
where's my finger?
there it is. So kind of where
Here.
North Park Gallery and Satoria are would have
This.
been more where Hirsch's building is. The next business we'll talk about in just a minute.
Okay.
But we'll flip over. So early advertisements are really my favorite because these businesses were marketing to people reading the newspaper. So you always had these big bold fonts and wording, about, to please your fastidious taste. I love those. The next person's got the best ones. But I wanted to call him Alfred, but that's not right. Raphael Hirsch. So he actually moves here pre-war.
Okay.
But since we can't search Marietta journals, that's the earliest I can find.
Yes.
He comes over from Germany. He settles. I don't know what brings him to Marietta. I mean, Marietta was a hopping place pre-war. It was very popular. We had.
It was a resort town.
It was a resort town. We had a large college here with Georgia Military Institute, so you were getting people from around the South
Back
to come
then, everybody was into healing waters and spring water. So there were some Dr. Cox's water cure.
William Root had his pharmacy.
Out here, yeah. So there was a lot of that. People came here for the climate because they came up here from Savannah and the coast because it was cooler in the summer, and then up north they settled down here because it was, we really have a pretty mild
it is
climate.
December 11th, and we're standing out here without jackets.
And it's gorgeous.
It is really nice today.
Yes.
But yeah, so it was a popular place. He came here. He ran his business on the north side of the square. He lived, actually, on Church Street, not far from where the Baptist church is. Now, I'm not sure if he had one of those dwellings that we kind of talked about when we did Hansel and church. If he had one of those dwellings on that block, which I think might have been the case.
Well, most of those were post-war, though, or even,
Well, they were dwellings. They were
right.
homes.
What year are we talking about, though? I thought you were talking
I mean, he
about
lived there
pre-war.
until 1860 or 1896.
Oh, okay.
So,
maybe it was
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we do know when he died in 1896. Later, his wife lived in the parsonage, which we talked about.
Right.
Victorian Village, right? That's the one.
Yeah, but we can't remember if that was
If it's that building or if it was a
if it
different
was
building.
the house before that one.
But I should also say, I'm going to turn you guys back around. These buildings are not it's the same location, but not the exact building.
Right.
Very important to know that because obviously Hirsch's original building would have been burnt by Sherman's forces.
Correct.
Two, which I'll talk about, we've talked about fires running rampant through North Park.
Multiple fires.
And it always seems to be North Park.
I know.
Interesting. There'll be one in a little bit that I'll talk about. It always happens.
Those buildings that are there, I don't know the exact years on those, but I
think
would...
it's the Farmers and Merchants Bank was like the 30s.
Hey, look what I have. Wait a minute. You hold it and I'll turn it around. Okay, this is a picture we have of the North Park in 1912. Okay, so by 1912,
Sorry,
come closer.
I'm reading it while you're talking about
Wait, this way. And come closer. Where's my finger? So we're talking about this block right here.
Yeah.
Those buildings, I don't think those are the same. I can't tell.
I don't think
so. So in 1912, the buildings that are here now weren't even there.
Well, and that picture last week that we showed from New York. Oops, no, don't push that button. Messing things up. The building we showed, or the picture we showed last week of the ones with the cows, the building shapes are not the same.
I have that one.
I know you do. So I was.
But
just,
that doesn't have this block.
No,
That's got that block.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We do have that part of the block though. You didn't bring that one.
Huh?
You didn't bring that one, isn't that?
What's this?
Oh, you didn't bring the other portion. The one I showed last week.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are probably from 20s, maybe 30s, 1930s. Yeah, they're not the original. So Hirsch is here through the war. He dies in 1896. He was one of the oldest and best known citizens of Marietta. Over 40 years ago, he settled in Marietta. So 1896 minus 40.
56.
1856-ish, yeah.
Yeah, over 40. So
Over 40
around
could anywhere between 1850 and 1856.
6, yeah.
His name was familiar to people as the name of the town, so he was known everywhere. So Marietta Hirsch just is popular. The question in his obit, who is it of the old settlers and their children that doesn't know Mr. Hirsch? Everybody did.
Everybody did.
But ironically enough,
Okay.
in the 1888 most prominent businessmen of Marietta, he's not listed.
That's what I was gonna say is, and I don't think I've seen his name in any journals or diaries or letters. I don't know. Can you think of any? I don't think so.
I know.
Early on, you know.
But, you know, the part with the I'm talking about that notebook I have that was a copy and it has the pictures of the prominent businessmen. He's not in there, and it makes me wonder if his religion might have been a reason that he wasn't included in that. But if we went and looked through Jewish newspapers around Atlanta, which we're kind of on our pathway doing, if he would be mentioned more for his
we'll let you know next week.
business acumen and all that kind of. It's, you know, guys, it's such a rabbit hole thing, and we just get so laser focused.
You know, research takes time.
It does.
And it's fun and it's fascinating, and sometimes we don't have the time. This week, if you haven't heard, we're hosting Santa Claus at the museum. So we had to get the North Pole ready.
Yeah,
that took a lot of time.
It did. Those dolls, if you guys didn't see those pictures of those dolls, they're picky.
Yeah.
They need a lot of fuss.
But this is an important history, and it's so robust that we really want to. That's why we're devoting 2 weeks to it. For those who didn't catch that in the beginning.
Yeah. So he died at the age of 66, healthy up until a year ago when heart disease greatly interfered with his close attention to business. So, yeah.
Ate too many cakes.
Because he ran a confectionery, that would happen.
Yeah.
He leaves a wife and 4 children, and besides the 3 brothers and 2 sisters. So his oldest son, Samuel, is a businessman in New York. His son, Ed, has a business in Atlanta, and then Morris took over the store here. So you got this connection. And I'm sure they, said, oh, hey, this is the trend in New York. Bring it down to Atlanta and Marietta and all of that. So he was a liberal, kind-hearted man who did a great deal of charity work, and he was the man of remarkable energy and looked after every detail of his business. His loss to our city is great. So I was very excited to find. I wish I had a picture or some sort of like sketch or something of him.
I know.
But
maybe we'll come across.
Maybe we will. But so when we talk about dry goods stores and things like that, it really is a catch-all term for selling everything, as you saw with that ad. Food, clothes. Now, the next person I want to talk about came after the war, but did know the Hirsches.
Okay.
This is, that's your picture. I'm sure it was a beautiful name at one point, but now we always kind of make fun of Bertha.
Oh, yeah.
Bertha. So Bertha.
Yeah, just the way you say it.
Bertha. With the head tilt to the side.
Bertha.
So Bertha Wyman Schoenthal. There's a name for you.
Yes.
Kind of rivals ours.
I was gonna say,
It's a pretty
like,
good one.
you know. Now, were they German as well?
They were German as well.
Okay.
But Bertha actually moves down here. She's the first time I see her is 1870 census.
Okay.
Widowed with 3 young children.
Okay.
Like 11, 8, and 5. So little kids.
Okay.
Now, it said somewhere that her naturalization was 1862, but she could have been here could have been in the United States earlier than
Sure.
that. Because her children were all born in the United States. So
When was the first one born?
if they're 11 in 1870, would have been around 1861. But some of the census records say 1859. We all know dates can be a little off.
They're 11 in 1870, then that would have been 1859.
Oh, is that right? There you go. Good math on you, by the way.
I've been doing virtual school.
That was really fast. I was impressed.
I know, right?
So 1859, where Bertha and her husband, I don't know if it's John or Jacob or it just says Jay, and or Joseph. I've seen a couple of different ones. They first settle in Baltimore.
Baltimore? What?
I know, we were talking about
Yeah, that would be interesting to go back and look a little bit into the Baltimore history, Jewish history, because maybe you do see a lot of Georgia Jews moving in that direction.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. We need to look that up.
So in 1865, she's still living in Baltimore with her children. Her husband has died. I don't know what from. I don't know if he served in the war. Again, German. I can read a little German, but not enough to get by.
Yeah.
You know, like hello and goodbye. I could pretty much read that. So, no, I can
read Grundhofer.
Yeah, I can read that too.
That's it.
So, she is here in 1870, living in her shop, as she has, which we'll show you where that was in a second. But going back to Baltimore, we do know during the war that there were Mariettans who had refugeed up to Baltimore.
Yes. Yes.
One person I can think of specifically as a child was Alice McClellan Burney, who became a co-founder of the PTA. Her father sent her sister, and her mother, sisters I should say, and mother to Baltimore to stay safe. And so, who knows, maybe Bertha...
But they were not Jewish, but
No,
still.
they weren't, but what I'm saying is maybe Bertha Schoenthal met somebody who said, you know, oh, Marietta's, after the war, Marietta's a town you could go to, there's a, Atlanta's not far, Hirsch is there, I mean, there could
Except
be connection.
really, what year did she end up coming down here?
Sometime between, 1865 and 1870.
Yeah, at that point, the conversation probably would have been more like, instead of, hey, this is a beautiful place you should go, it probably been like, hey, this place is like really cheap right now. The land is, I mean, it is poked. So if you want to start a shop in Marietta, that's the time. Get in there now because nobody's running stores.
Nobody's running stores, you're right. So her business was actually just a few doors down from where Hirsch's was. And you'd think, stupid, why be right down the street from your competitor? But that's literally how Marietta was. Every other door seemed to be a dry goods business.
Right, but at the same time, you know, you'll often have a CVS across the street from Walgreens, and or a Kroger on the down the street from Publix. I mean, it's all competitive. And back then, this was it for shopping. Like, you didn't find stores up and down the streets, and you know, this was it. So
this was it for sure.
You know, it's not. You know, I think it's.
But also it's like any other department store. They're gonna buy from different people. They're gonna figure out trends differently.
You got a Macy's, you got JCPenney, you got a what else we have?
Mall. Who goes to the mall anymore? All right, I'm gonna turn the camera around so you can find out where Mrs. Schoenthal's business was.
Okay.
All right, you see those beautiful pieces of art on the wall? That's where it was. Primarily where, hold on, where's my finger? Actually, the one with the cute little kid's face. There you go.
Yeah.
You can see it.
On that course. So there were 2 buildings there, is what you're saying? In that lot?
It would have been 2 buildings, and she would have had that corner lot.
Okay.
And it would have extended back farther. And there was another business behind it, which
that's where the drive-through for Tumlin. So right here, this building is that little drive-through with offices on top that we...
Well, there was that little alley back there, too.
Yeah, an alley. Well, yeah, an alley, too. But that we covered when we talked about the Hansel Street.
Yeah.
But then, so we're saying this block right here was actually divided into 2 buildings at that time. Now, when this building was torn down, what, 10 years ago?
10 years. It was the Farmers and Merchants Bank.
Right, so that was just one big building.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Yeah. But there is a hole there. Maybe Philip will let me go in there and dig around.
You go right ahead.
I will.
She'll get down there one day.
I will. I'll see if I find any variety stuff from the variety store.
Yeah, because they called it a variety store, which I love. So Bertha and her children are actually buried in Oakland as well, because that's where I remember seeing her. Hold on, let me go through everybody. All right, so I didn't put these in order. Dang it! What? I didn't put my articles in order. They're not in chronological order.
It's okay.
It'll be all right. But Bertha, smart lady. I love her ads. So her first one that I find is in 1870. June 10th, 1870. It would have been nice if it had been your birthday, but she didn't work like that. All right, you ready to flip and I can read this to everybody?
Let's do it.
All right. Let me see, where am I at?
Take 2 steps back, and then I'm going to go down like this. Okay, there we go.
All right, so we have the new variety store, Northside Public Square, choice confectionaries, tropical fruits of all time. It was really all about the tropical fruits.
Yes.
Canned fruits, preserves, coconuts, bologna and sausage.
Yum.
Dry goods, question mark? Interesting. All qualities and style. Gentlemen's furnishing goods, millinery, that's hat making, perfumery, oil table covers, that's what you would put on your table to clean. Ladies' shoes, baby carriages, a fine assortment of crockery and willow ware.
And notions.
I did forget the notions.
Don't forget the notions.
So, yes, it is her variety store. This is 1870, so we'll turn back around, please.
And, I just want to point out, too, this is a very early example of a female-run business in Cobb County, which, one thing that we always struggle with is finding the true histories of women, because a lot of times they're lost to history. They're Mrs. John Doe or Mrs. Jeff Reed or whatever, instead of Amy Reed, who did this and that,
It's always Krista McKay. It's never anything else.
Well,
I always mess with her on that one.
I just love that she's putting her name on the business, that she's running the show,
You do see pre-Civil War 1 or 2 women, but their business was strictly women's wear and millinery.
Well, Alice's mother was one as well, right?
Her father actually ran the business. Leander ran the business.
Oh.
But
I thought after he died, she...
Well, yeah, but that would have been after the war. Yeah. But before the war, there was a Madame Remington that I came across. I haven't found much about her.
Madame Remington?
Yes.
What kind of business does she have?
A millinery.
Oh. She wasn't a Madam?
No.
No.
You put that in the ad because people think you're French and fancy. That's how it works.
Oh, is that what it means?
Yes.
Okay.
French and fancy.
Okay. Good to know.
Lord. So, we do have women, and that Mrs. Schoenthal is definitely one of the, I think she's the only Jewish woman post-war, before the 20th century, raising her kids, running a business. So woman power to her. I'm really impressed by her.
Yes.
So we do have some more ads for me to show, but before I do that, I want to read this article. In 1874, it was not uncommon for business owners to live in their building.
Right.
Either above it or behind it. So the story
I think they still do sometimes on the square, but illegally. I've heard rumors.
I don't know. Lately I'm looking around and a lot of the restaurants have the top floors.
Yeah, that's true. They're taking over.
This is February 1874. Last Sunday morning about 3 o'clock, the alarm of fire was given while a dense volume of smoke was seen issuing from the rear of Mrs. B. Schoenthal's variety store. See, North Park Square, guys. Upon approaching the door, the men were driven back by the stifling smoke and heat, for the stairway leading to the rooms above the store where Mrs. S. and family resides were completely enveloped in flames. The fire was gaining good headway, I couldn't read that word, and apparently beyond control. No fire engine in the city We knew
Where's
that.
the Aurora?
1874. I don't know.
remember what year it was.
I don't either.
Okay.
The men saw that if they didn't subdue it, the finest block of buildings in Marietta might or must be destroyed. Does that look like must to you?
Moat.
Most be destroyed.
Looks like moat.
It does. I don't think it's moat, but I don't. It's
Typo.
well, it's hard when they're scanning some of these. Anyway, North Park Square might be enveloped in flames and business is gone if we
Yes.
don't get this fixed.
Maybe this is the fire that brought on the Aurora, the need. Did they call the Atlanta Fire Department? Did they mention that?
No.
Okay.
So with a heroism born of necessity, they fought the flames manfully, and buckets of water, one after another, soon extinguished it. The damage to the building, furniture, etc., will amount to no small sum. During the excitement, Mrs. S. and son fell down the steps and received some injuries.
Well, if that's all.
That's all.
That's okay. But you know what I'm thinking? If I get down in that hole, there might be evidence of a fire.
Multiple fires,
Yes.
probably. So we do know...
I think I'm going to need ground penetrating radar.
Probably.
And probably some very highly expensive equipment.
Yes.
Okay.
You write a grant for that. You go ahead.
Okay.
So I got 2 more ads to show you, just because I think she's super duper smart with her advertising. Just because it did catch my attention. Granted, I searched for her name, but I did find the ads pretty quickly. So if you want to turn around, we'll just...
Okay.
All right. So in the cemetery, how we talk about the hand pointing.
Yes,
correct?
yes.
It's pointing you to read
Yes,
her ad.
read
So
her ad.
She's got staple and fancy dry goods. She's got choice confectionaries. FYI, fresh oysters received daily. I don't know from where and I don't know how fresh, but they are daily.
I mean, what year is this? 77?
1877.
It had to be coming off of the train from the coast.
Yeah, but how fresh is fresh?
I don't know. Like, I mean...
A little sketchy.
Yeah.
So this one is my favorite because she is telling us not to read it. Don't read this, but read it.
Reverse psychology.
I know. I love it. I thought it was
Don't
great.
read this.
Don't read. Because what are we going to do? We're going to read it.
Of course.
Selling off at cost. In view of retiring from business within the next 3 months, I offer my entire stock of merchandise consisting of dry goods, notions, Miller, all this stuff. And she said she's going to retire.
Is that just a trick? Is she tricking us?
No,
What?
because it says don't read that. Read
Yes.
this. BS.
BS.
I thought it was.
Psych! I'm not retiring.
I'm not retiring.
That was BS,
I know.
folks.
I thought it was really funny. Don't read this.
Yeah.
BS.
What was the day? Was it April? April Fool's?
No, this
almost.
is almost. It's March of 1876. But she does. I bet she thought at one point, my kids are getting a little bit older. Let me kind of step back from business. But she keeps going. Good for her.
We know someone else who recently retired from the city and now he's got a new job. And his comment was, turns out I like making money. So I'm going to get another job. Maybe that was her problem. Turns out she liked having money.
She did, and I don't blame her. What I appreciate about Bertha is I do know, reading some of the articles, that she raised 3 great kids. 2 daughters and a son. Only 1 daughter married. That daughter was kind enough to have mother live with her and later in life. Very nice. Along with the sister that didn't get married, so that's pretty impressive.
Okay.
But the son, Henry, was recently, this is 1888, this was a story that kind of went across Georgia, North Georgia at least. He was elected clerk of the council for Marietta.
Okay.
So he was the city clerk. He was filling the vacancy from the death of the previous clerk, Mr. Will T. Banks, who married the daughter of Judge Lester. Judge Lester is buried over at the city cemetery. If you want to know about him, you go on a tour with me.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, there's like a bug. It's only December. The office nets about $800 per year. That's a pretty good chunk of money for 1888. But Mr. Schoenthal proposes to give the widow and 4 children of Mr. Banks half of the proceeds.
Wow, that's really nice of him.
That was really nice of him.
Yeah.
So this is indeed Avery Noble and I don't know what that means. Very noble. I'm going to go with that. Maybe it's supposed to be Avery, but it's only one word.
Space. Gotta hit that space bar.
Sorry, I'm letting those sirens go by.
space bar. They didn't have a space bar.
It was
It's
put in the
typeset.
blocks. They didn't put those space in.
Typeset.
We're gonna let that go past real quick.
Yes. It's a hopping place today on the square. For
It's
those,
so
I mean,
nice
it's
out.
beautiful. There's lots of people out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hopping place.
so-
Okay.
All right, so a very noble and generous act will raise Mr. Schoenthal in the esteem and a good opinion of everybody. Henry is a clever, whole-souled, generous, and most estimable young man. These are a lot of hard words.
He's a
today.
good guy.
Yeah, he is.
He's a good guy.
And this act of his putting into practice the true principles of his nature. And I really loved that
Yes,
story. I thought
that's
that.
very nice.
And then I find out later,
Uh-oh.
2 years later, that the fire that occurred in his family home must have really had an effect on him because he becomes the chief of the fire department.
Oh, wow.
But at that point,
Or
was
they
still a
screwed up so badly, he was like, look, I'm going to run this place better than any of y'all.
But was it still when was it still volunteer at that point?
Yeah. I think
Yeah. So yeah, he.
Oh, wait, 1890?
1890. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm not
no,
sure.
maybe not 1890. No, I don't know about that. I was thinking 1870s.
No, maybe he decided he wanted 2 jobs at the city, and that's why he did
If
it.
only we knew somebody who had a fire museum who could tell us about it. Oh, we do. The city of Marietta. So we'll find that out.
Yeah, we'll ask firefighter Steve. I think he's still
Yes.
recovering from the Santa Blitz from last week. He
maybe.
was, but it says in here he's a most excellent young gentleman. Henry, firefighter Steve is nice too, but young gentleman with enthusiastic and a well-informed fireman. Yeah, he's well-informed because he survived a fire. He's well pleased with our boys and thinks that they will do extremely well for the short time they have practiced.
Okay.
Let's hope.
Let's hope.
But the other part with Henry that I thought was really interesting was when he was clerk. Okay, so he was doing 2 jobs for the city at once:
Oh, yeah. He's clerk of the council
clerk of the council and
Fire
fire chief.
and running a business.
No, his mama was running her
Oh, okay.
business.
Okay.
Let mama do her job.
Okay.
He has his. So in 1890, the footings of the city clerk Schoenthal's books, they show a very handsome increase in the taxable property of Marietta. During the last decade, the total amount of taxable property in Marietta for 1880 was almost $700,000. While in 1890, it's $1.7 million, almost 1.8, an increase of over $1 million.
Wow.
So I was pretty impressed. This is a
Yes.
very pretty showing for the Gem City, but from present prospects, the next few years will show greater prosperity than
It was
we have ever
growing.
seen.
I mean, it was regrowing. You know, you get through Reconstruction and you're rebuilding all the business on the square. You reestablish yourself as a resort town. You've got the Whitlock Inn. You've got a lot of these other places, resorts. They're marketing themselves again as a place to come for wellness and entertainment and southern hospitality. And yeah, so it's
And you've got businesses are back booming. I mean, you've got his mother's store, you've got Hirsch's store, you've got also you're starting to see a little bit more of an influx of connections between Atlanta and Marietta.
Yeah.
Like the Jewish community, I don't think we mentioned this earlier, but Hirsch and Schoenthal were going to be actively involved in the Atlanta Jewish community as well.
Right, because that was one of our questions was when did Cobb County or Marietta first get a temple? And
It was 20th century.
It's I think it's 1960s is when I think
Yeah.
they first built one over in East Cobb, and we're gonna get into that history next week.
week.
But I do think that was it. So until then, yeah, everybody's going down to Atlanta for that. So
And that's why they were buried. These families here, the early Jewish families here, were buried at Oakland in their Jewish section. And we highly suggest, if you have never been to Oakland, to go down there. The Jewish section is much tighter than
it's
any.
interesting. There's no sidewalks between or family plots separated as much as other plots. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting space. I also think it's a good time to mention the Bremen Jewish
Yes.
Heritage Museum, and that is in downtown Atlanta. It is a fabulous museum, and
Yes.
it's amazing. They've got some great exhibits. I don't know if they're open right now or not.
They might be open, but you guys follow us on Facebook, follow them because they do put a lot of their videos on Facebook and YouTube as well. So yeah, I forgot about that museum. I should have remembered that.
It's a wonderful, beautiful exhibits, and they have an amazing permanent exhibit on the Holocaust experience,
Yes.
and then other history as well. Which actually we may reach out to them this week and see if they've got anything on Cobb County.
Yeah.
You know, chances are they do.
So, Bertha Schoenthal and her son, Henry, actually die within a month of each other, 1916. The daughters die a little bit later. So, we kind of went through the early 20th century. We're not going to focus, obviously, like you said before, on Leo Frank, but...
No, but it is important to note that they are still here when all of that is happening. And so you have just rampant anti-Semitism here in Marietta at the time when they, you know, eventually hang and murder Leo Frank. But you've still got Jewish businesses. So imagine putting yourself in their shoes. They're trying to run a business here in this community that they've been a part of for decades, and now they're dealing with the national spotlight on that little town of Marietta, or not treating, you know, people right. And I can imagine it's probably scary.
Well, especially I would think for Henry, somebody that was working as a city appointed person, you know, or a city employee.
Yeah.
That would have been very interesting. We haven't come across any sort of connection, but again, this is, like all of our videos, a constant work in progress. There's always more information.
I think there were warnings at one point.
There were.
And I believe it's in Steve Oney's book, And the Dead Shall Rise, where he does mention that at that time in Marietta, that the group of people who were, you know, the mob mentality who were so against Frank, that they were warning all the Jews in Marietta to shut their doors and that sort of thing. We'll have to go back and look that up too.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of that happening. So it wasn't, you know, all roses and
sunshine and
confectionery.
Roses. Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah.
Confections. It was hard. And it continued to be hard being an other. A minority, if you will, religious-wise, in our county, even still to today. I'm sure some would say that it's still hard.
Yeah.
And it's something that we need to recognize and remember and document.
Document for sure.
We haven't run across, so far, we didn't run across any other specific instances of like a hate crime other than Leo Frank, but
yes we did. The Syrian community, remember?
Oh yeah, well
but against
Jewish.
Against the Jew, yes, there weren't anything against members of the Jewish community
that we've found yet.
No, yeah.
So we may find some. We'll see.
Yeah. So I'm gonna leave you with this note. Mrs. Schoenthal's ice cream store was not called an ice cream store. It was an ice cream saloon.
And she was a madam?
No, that was somebody else.
Dang it. Don't make that connection.
No.
If she was a madam at a saloon, I mean, there's
that
gotta
would
be more going
an
on.
ice cream saloon.
Gotta
No,
be more going on.
All right, so we will be back next week with part 2. We'll probably show some more of the other sides of the square, just so you guys get an idea where those businesses were. Then, if you have an appointment with Santa tonight or tomorrow
or Sunday,
you'll see one of us. And then also, thank you for those awesome comments. I don't know if she noticed, but I posted a picture of us from yesterday.
Oh.
And we got comments because people like us.
Good. Thanks.
So yeah, make sure to check us out next week. I forgot to put last week's video on YouTube, so I'll do that one. Santa totally
catch up with last week.
Yeah.
And if you have any information out there that you'd like to share, since we're on the subject and we're covering it again next year. It's not next year.
Who knows?
Yet.
It could be next year too, though.
Next week, then please share it with us and let us know. And we'll see you guys
next week.
Next time.
Have an awesome weekend. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.